West Germany declared war, I daren't even say I came from a country that was so bloody awful as Germany.
An estimated 70,000 refugees fled Germany and Austria for Britain. They had the ultimate motivation to help defeat the Nazis.
The next day, I went to the Air Ministry, and the recruiting people there sort of said, "Hey, well, wait a minute, but I don't think we take non-British, and certainly I don't think we take German."
Towards the end of 1939, when the British government realised it had so many Germans and Austrians who had enlisted in the British forces, decided that they would make use of them.
10,000 German and Austrian men and women volunteered to fight for Britain, and each swore allegiance to the King. But for now, the non-combatant Pioneer Corps was the only option open to German volunteers. The pick and shovel symbol on the cap badge showed their key contribution would be hard labour, not active service.
I felt I had to do something and make an effort towards the war effort, because the people who we were fighting against were out to eradicate me. You know, they wanted to get rid of me, so I had to fight it. You can't just sit back and say, let them get on with it, can you?
They wanted to fight for Britain, and they found themselves literally digging for victory. They found themselves mixing concrete. They wanted to fight proper. They wanted to exact revenge.
In contrast, one infamous British passport holder was now working for the Nazis. William Joyce, ex-head of propaganda for the British Union of Fascists, had fled England on the eve of war. Bearing the scars of political skirmishes in Britain, he was now being used by Hitler to broadcast crude anti-Allied propaganda to an already jittery British public.
Britain's present horrible dilemma. The Royal Air Force is too weak.
As the Nazi invasion of Britain looked increasingly likely, many feared Hitler's spies would infiltrate the German refugees. Those in the Pioneer Corps were safe. Thousands of others were arrested and interned.
We went swimming one morning, about 9 o'clock, knock at the door, and it was a local police car to say that they'd come to intern me.
Not everybody was interned at that time. I was perhaps unlucky. Mr. Churchill said, collar the lot, and they got me.
A year after escaping Dachau, Willy Hirschfeld was locked up again. This time he was bound for Australia on the infamous troop ship Dunera.
It was a 9-week journey in horrific circumstances, and they were manhandled quite badly, brutally, by some of the guards.
But most of the people had all their things stolen, had their things taken away. I had nothing.
In 1942, the government realized the value of recruiting German-speaking soldiers to fight behind enemy lines. MI5 agents were sent into Pioneer Corps regiments to select elite refugees desperate to fight the Nazis. Those willing faced certain death if captured behind enemy lines.
What we've got here is a group of men who had something special.
We were joined by an elderly man who spoke German with a very distinctive Swiss accent. He was very cagey about his background. It was then that we realized we were going to be commandos, which was a leap from the ridiculous to the sublime, if you like, from the Pioneer Corps to this elite unit.
When the threat of a Nazi invasion of Britain subsided, the government began to accept more enemy aliens into the armed forces. From 1943, they transferred in large numbers from the Pioneer Corps to armed regiments. Their moment had come. They could now become Churchill's German Army. After years of oppression, it was their time to fight, and they would do it on land, sea, and air. In 1944, Horst Herzberg received his call-up papers for the Royal Navy and was eventually posted to HMS Bellona, where he was trained to eavesdrop on enemy radio traffic in the English Channel. His commanding officer wasn't immediately convinced of his loyalty.
It means you speak the language. Aye, sir. Where did you learn to speak the language? He said, school, sir. Which school did you go to? I said, Hindenburg Obere Altschule. But it's Germany, isn't it? I said, aye, sir. But you are British. I said, no, sir. I said, but I hope the Admiralty know what they're doing.
The Germans fighting for Churchill would face torture and execution if their German past was revealed.
So before they were sent abroad, they changed their names to very English-sounding names.
Klaus Adam would become Ken Adam. Horst Pinshaver became Geoffrey Perry. Helmut Rosettenstein became Harry Rosny. Horst Herzberg became William Howard. Willy Hirschfeld became Willy Field. And Klaus Ascher became Colin Anson.
Very soon, frankly, one started to feel that our new names were our real names, and we had left our old names behind. And now one really felt like a British commando and no longer as a German refugee.
They were now in fighting units and ready for battle. But they had to face the reality that they may have to kill their former countrymen.
The enemy I faced could have easily been my friends at school, could have easily been my cousins in the army. I couldn't stand by and not do something, England having saved my life. It's as simple as that. But at the same time, I'm not too proud to admit that I'm also, in my heart, a coward.
The personal risks were high. Attached to the Royal Marines, Colin Anson was now part of the biggest ever landing operation to date, the invasion of Sicily. As his ship came under attack from Stuka dive bombers, he suffered a serious head injury and waited all night for the rescue boats to arrive.
And I was left till among the last. I'd been left till last because they didn't think I'd last the night anyway. Some of my skull had been shot away and my brain apparently was visible. A piece of shrapnel went through my helmet and through my skull and sort of skittered round to the back inside and lodged itself where it still is, even now. I was in a bunk next to one containing a young German paratrooper. He was a very nice young man and ever so pleased to have somebody next to him with whom he could chat.
Setbacks like these were seized upon by William Joyce, dubbed Lord Haw-Haw by the press, in his constant broadcasts to the British public.
In November alone, the German forces sank the following British naval units.
In London, William Howard's father was devastated by one broadcast, which reported that his son's ship had been sunk by a German U-boat.
I always rang my dad at home in London. How are you, son? He said, well, what's the matter? He said, well, I've heard Lord Haw-Haw, he was broadcasting for the Germans, Lord Haw-Haw, made an announcement about 10 days ago that the Bellona was sunk off Kola Bay with all guns fired. He said, well, they tried, but they didn't succeed, Daddy.
The Germans fighting for Britain were now deployed and battling across the entire European theatre of war. In the Royal Armoured Corps, the Infantry, the Royal Marine Commandos, and the Royal Navy. And they would now spearhead the most ambitious ever land invasion in history.
We knew it had to be D-Day. They were telling us all kind of horror stories in those days, that the entire sea will be ablaze with flaming oil, and you can't get anywhere near, and they will be coming at us from all sides, and there's not a chance in hell that we're going to get ashore.
The possibility that I wouldn't see the end was very real with me. The fact that you're going to see dead people, your own as well as Germans.
In a single day, the Allies landed more than 150,000 troops on 5 different beaches in Normandy. William Howard's HMS Bellona was one of almost 7,000 vessels that made up Operation Neptune.
And there were all these planes overhead. It was unbelievable, the number of aircraft. Then the ships all ran. It was an awesome sight, totally awesome. And at that particular moment, I had a feeling that we will succeed. I had that sort of feeling because it was so powerful, the whole thing, the enormity of it.
If everything went to plan, this would be payback time on a grand scale.
I was overawed by the impact and the power, the impact of this war machine going into action. And everything was sacrificed for that aim.
The bombardment started. The battle wagons, the big ones, went into action to send stuff over to the coast. And it went on, and the thunder and the lightning. It was an incredible sound.
Willie Field had returned from internment in Australia and was now assigned to
And the recruiting people there sort of said, "Hey, well, wait a minute, but I don't think we take non-British. And certainly I don't think we take German."
Towards the end of 1939, when the British government realised it had so many Germans and Austrians who had enlisted in the British forces, decided that they would make use of them.
10,000 German and Austrian men and women volunteered to fight for Britain, and each swore allegiance to the King. But for now, the non-combatant Pioneer Corps was the only option open to German volunteers. The pick and shovel symbol on the cap badge showed their key contribution would be hard labor.
Germany declared war. I daren't even say I came from a country that was so bloody awful as Germany.
An estimated 70,000 refugees fled Germany and Austria for Britain. They had the ultimate motivation to help defeat the Nazis.
The next day, I went to the Air Ministry.
Labour, not active service.
I felt I had to do something and make an effort towards the war effort, because the people who we were fighting against were out to eradicate me. You know, they wanted to get rid of me. So I had to fight it. You can't just sit back and say, let them get on with it, can you?
They wanted to fight for Britain, and they found themselves literally digging for victory. They found themselves mixing concrete. They wanted to fight proper. They wanted to exact revenge.
In contrast, one infamous British passport holder was now working for the Nazis. William Joyce, ex-head of propaganda for the British Union of Fascists, had fled England on the eve of war. Bearing the scars of political